Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Andrew, and we are the IB English guys. And today we want to talk about an amazing opinion editorial writer we've had great success with in our class. His name is Leonard Pitts Jr. Why do we like this guy, Mr. Giles?
We love Leonard Pitts because, first of all, he is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. He's a syndicated columnist. He writes for the Miami Herald, but he's published in newspapers all over the U.S.
Yeah, and even though he's writing from the United States, Mr. Giles, I think he talks about a range of global issues. It could be social media, it could be wars in Afghanistan, interactions with North Korea. He really covers a range of issues. What else do we like about Pitts?
He is a fantastic writer. His opinion pieces are they're fun to read, but they're also just so engaging and passionate. And we can steal his moves as writers ourselves. And
Folks,
we love his mentor text.
You know, it's one thing to deconstruct a text, but if you want to become a truly great writer, study the moves of Leonard Pitts because he will help you become a really polished writer.
That's right.
Okay, Giles. Now, if we're going to talk about Pitts and op-eds, I think we need a mnemonic to help us through that. And this is from last video. So guys, if you want to know more about how to break this down, the mnemonic from last video is...
Honor Aunt Vera because she requires care and love.
Okay, I got it. That's a lot to get my head around. Can you say it one more time, please?
Honor Aunt Vera because she requires care and love.
All right. So if I remember correctly, the H stands for headlines.
Headlines and hooks, that's right.
Headlines and hooks.
A is anecdotes and stories.
I believe the V for Vera, that's voice, right? You want to have lots of voice in your writing?
That's right. B is background. We want to have background. We have to give it the news story that we're responding to.
S are the structural moves.
That's right. R is the reader connection.
L, of course, is language. We're looking at word choice and other cool moves with words and language.
And C is that call to action, that final closing remark.
Because ultimately, Mr. Giles, an op-ed has to have that piece, right? It is a call to action. Okay.
Now, today's video is different because what we want to do is we want to look at Leonard Pitts as a writer. We want to look at 3 different op-eds and look at him as a body of work.
Yeah, and I think the purpose here today, folks, is to really show you just the type of range he has as a writer, and hopefully you can use him in your class or maybe talk your teacher into using him in class because we have found our kids do great with this text.
Yeah. Now, we've linked all 3 op-eds for you to read in their entirety down below, and you definitely should. They're pretty great. But we're going to highlight certain areas of the text and just talk about that area of the text and be specific about what
Folks,
we see.
the goal here is to identify key moves that are unique or that are really what we can attribute to Leonard Pitts Jr. So, for example, if you're going to use him in any kind of assessment, you could say, hey, I'm a master of Leonard Pitts Jr. I know this person's craft.
Yeah. So our first headline is from an op-ed fairly recently about Facebook. Can you read the headline for us?
Sure, it says, maybe you can't fix Facebook, but signing off is a breeze. Obviously, this is talking about social media.
Yeah, and he's making his claim clear just in that headline. We know that he's saying that Facebook has problems. You can't fix it, but we can actually choose not to engage in social media. So he's already giving us an idea of what his opinion
he's kind
is.
of loading his main claim in the actual headline.
That's right.
What are some interesting moves you see in the writing itself, Giles, that you can bring up?
I'm going to highlight a portion of the text that I found interesting where he's talking about some of the negative things said about Facebook and what the facts tell us. And he wants to say that these facts tell us many things about Facebook that contradict what Facebook says about their own company. And notice how he uses repeated structure. Remember, S stands for structure. I love the sentence beginnings, the way he's saying they say, they say, they say. He's showing us through this repeated parallel structure how the facts tell us many things that are fairly negative about Facebook and its power.
Wow, that's a pretty in-depth analysis of anaphora. That was incredible. Something I noticed in the text, I noticed the R, of course, is the reader connection. And when talking about Facebook and its ability to fix itself, he asks the rhetorical question. He says, but can that really be done? But he answers it and says, there is reason to doubt, which of course means this is an example of hypophora rather than rhetorical question. He asks the question, then answers it for you.
Yeah, so anytime he's asking questions, he's asking us as readers. That's powerful. Let's go into the second article that we found, the second opinion piece.
This one's titled, The Dots Had Names, and it's talking about the war in Afghanistan. What's interesting about the headline or the hook, Mr. Giles?
I think this is a very cryptic headline, very different from the previous one. This makes us think, like, how do dots have names? What is he talking about? And it's makes me curious.
Yeah,
makes me want to read more.
Yeah, if you're a follower of Leonard Pitts Jr., you'd say, hey, I don't really, this is intriguing. I think I'll read on. He's accomplished his mission. You're going to read on.
That's right.
What are some other language choices you like here, Giles?
Good. So I highlighted a beginning part of the text, and I'm pairing it with the end part of the text. Notice at the beginning, he's saying in a paragraph, he's saying that these men that were in the video that were falling to the ground were the size of a period. And then he says the period was an end to some sentence that no one wrote.
Wait a second. The period is the end of a sentence that no one wrote?
Yeah.
All right. Analyze that. Break that down for me and tell me the so what.
He's comparing these men that were falling to the ground in this famous video that people had seen on social media, on the news. He's comparing them to a period on a sentence. This is a metaphor. And again, he's saying that this is a sentence that no one wrote. This is again referring to the war in Afghanistan is a war that you can't really assign any one author to, just like it's a sentence that no one wrote.
Yeah, and again, this fact that it was an unwritten sentence, it's an unused period, it really kind of devalues the people of Afghanistan, which is kind of what he's saying here.
One more thing I want to add. If you go to the end of this article, we notice that he says that reports identified them as Muhammad and Salifa Hotak. And then he says, just so we all know, the dots had names.
Oh, the circular structure, Giles. Talk about the circular structure and why that's so powerful. I love it. It makes me want to write.
This is the C in our mnemonic. I think this is powerful. He's giving us their names, and he's also referring back to the headline, and he's reminding us this is his call to action, and that these are people. These are human beings that were left behind in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and when we're thinking about Afghanistan, a choice that really stood out for me, he describes the plight of the people in Afghanistan and the experience with words such as greasy, grisly, miserable, and he refers to the whole experience as a misadventure. For me, this is a classic case of just him using lexical clusters, really elevating language, L equals language, of course, and he wants to really use these words to make an impact and show you the dire situation for the people.
Yeah, that's great. Powerful language. Okay, our third and last op-ed is about COVID vaccine hesitancy.
Right, and of course, this is another global issue. We've all lived through the pandemic together. This is one that many people can relate to. What do you notice about the headline of the hook, Mr. Giles?
Well, I notice, again, he's saying we can't endanger the lives of many to humor the misconceptions of the few. We see this sort of contrast between many and few. And he's really saying that there's few people who are misconceived. Again, he's giving us his claim that people that are hesitant to the vaccine are really misinformed.
So, Mr. Giles, we haven't really talked about the hey from Aunt Vera, the anecdote. Do you see any anecdotes yet in this piece?
Yeah, he talks about two brothers one was a conservative radio host and a vaccine skeptic in Tennessee, and how they both chose to not get vaccinated. And we noticed that one of the brothers was on a ventilator, and I think again but the other brother had changed his mind, and I think this is really significant. Is really talking about this personal story and how vaccine hesitancy is affecting them.
Yeah, that's really tough. I mean, and that, of course, that anecdote really does build pathos. The reader feels a great sense of despair and sadness as we hear this story. It's really troubling.
Yeah, it personalizes the story and it individuates the story, and I think that's really important.
I like that. You know, one thing I really noticed about this piece too, Mr. Giles, is says, we were almost there. We were this close. And again, I really just like the voice and sort of the way he interacts with his reader. I think that's really nice. He's someone that I can connect to. The inclusive language of we makes me feel like I'm a part of that. He's sympathizing with me together. I feel like we're together in this whole pandemic, which of course we were. That feeling of togetherness makes it much easier for Pitts to deliver his main claim.
Yeah, using that language we really hear him speaking there, and I think that is so important, and it again connects to his feelings about the importance of coming together and getting over this pandemic.
All right, Giles. So now that we've explored 3 different op-eds, we've thought about a myriad of global issues that Pitts explores. If someone asked me, or someone asked you, Giles, in closing, what are some of Leonard Pitts Jr.'s major moves? What would you say?
Well, I'd say, first of all, he has an intimate connection with his readers through his use of language.
Yeah, for me, I would think about he has really clever use of syntax in the way he structures his op-eds into really short, manageable paragraphs.
I think he's an emotional writer, and he uses really emotive and powerful language that connects with me.
Yeah, and I think that can be reflected in his tone. I think that his tone is biting. It's very angry. He's very upset about the state of our world, and that comes clear through his tone.
Absolutely. He uses sarcasm and irony and some humor to get his point across.
I think he's really well informed with history and current events. You'll see allusions to famous people or other important news stories of the time. Allusions are important.
Yeah, and the figurative language. He's not afraid to break out a metaphor and to use interesting language, interesting comparisons that makes it vivid.
And lastly, and I think most importantly, because it's an op-ed, he has to inspire some sort of call to action at the end. Giles, there's nothing worse than writing a depressing piece and giving the reader no option or no way out. That's not what Leonard Pitts does. He makes us ponder, or he gives a call to action. Very powerful closing.
So use his work to write your own op-eds, and use his work to also just bring in some great text in your life.
Guys, once again, we hope this video is helpful for you. Please remember Aunt Vera, if you ever look at an op-ed again, we think this mnemonic can really help you break down text and help you become a better writer. Okay, folks, we hope this video is helpful for you, and if you want more, let us know. Subscribe and tell us what you want. We are here for you. Thanks so much,
guys.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.